Marvel Studios in troubles. What to do about the Jonathan Majors situation? You have Mahershala Ali complaining about Blade and basically needing a page one rewrite. Everything going on in Hollywood right now. There is this big bombshell article from Variety magazine. Today is November 1st. I'm recording at 6:07 p.m. and I'm talking about this new Variety article that dropped. Now, I was at work this morning, so I haven't actually gotten the chance to really read this article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll around, I'm going to read this article, and I'm going to stop and give analysis. I do apologize if I'm not always making direct eye contact, but here we go. Crisis at Marvel, Jonathan Majors backup plans, the Marvel's reshoots reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed by Tatiana Siegel here at Variety. So let's read this. And apologies, I know I'm not like an audio reader. What's it called? I'm not an audiobook reader, so my voice is a little rough, so do bear with me. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Most years, the vibes would have been confident, even cocky, given the premier superhero brand, owned by Disney since 2009, has remade the entertainment business in its image. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. The most pressing issue to be discussed at the retreat was what to do about Jonathan Majors, the actor who has been poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but instead is headed to a high-profile trial in New York later this month on domestic violence charges. The actor insists he is a victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose the case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans to center the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Major's villainous character, Kang the Conqueror. So let's just talk about this stuff real quick, which this is kind of, I think, the main point that everyone, including myself, have been asking this past really year since the Jonathan Majors story came out, and the not even allegations, basically the arrest that happened towards him. What is going to happen in the MCU? Because personally, I'm disgusted at the idea of Jonathan Majors profiting if what he was arrested of is true. Now, we do not know exactly what happened. However, an arrest is a very serious matter, especially when it comes into the form of strangulation, where he choked out his girlfriend, as the allegations and arrests show. There had been murmurs that this was going to be dropped and it was going to kind of go forward. That was never the case. This is going to be a major trial, I think, over the next few months. And you can see that kind of reflected in Loki season 2. From what I've seen, Majors is kind of not at the forefront to the degree that I think he would have been in February pre Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. We're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, but that's a very complex situation as well. I don't know if you heard about Puck News. Matt Bellany wrote over, or at least reported over on The Town. He talked about this idea that, and actually, let me give proper credit here. It was Joanna Robinson in her new book about Marvel Studios basically reported that the reaction from Marvel when Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania didn't perform well critically and commercially shocked them. They thought they had a huge hit on their hand. And that started the fragile relationship that is now there with Jonathan Majors. But let's continue this story. At the gathering in Palm Springs, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom, which, just note, Secret Wars is largely a Doctor Doom story. So this idea that they're leading up to Secret Wars, it's kind of crazy that I was repivoted to believe to be Kang the Conqueror. And now with all these allegations coming out, they're like, maybe we should go back to this idea of it being Doctor Doom. But nonetheless, but making any shift would carry its own headaches. Majors was already in a big presence in the MCU, including the scene-stealing antagonist in February's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I have some thoughts on this performance, just as a pause real quick. I liked this performance back when I saw the movie in February, and I gave this movie a pretty damn positive review on this channel. I've had issues with it since. It's very scatterbrained. there is actually no real sense of terror in this performance because it's just so confined in the quantum realm. And it's like, oh, the destruction of the quantum realm. What does that really mean? That's kind of the struggle with uh multiverse storytelling and worlds that don't exist, and we're kind of being stuck in them, where it's just like, if the quantum realm really gets destroyed, what does that really mean? So I did think Jonathan Majors was good in King and Conqueror. I also thought he didn't have a lot to work with in this film. And he has been positioned as the franchise's next big thing in this season of Loki, particularly in the finale, which airs on November 9th and sets up Kang as the titular star of the fifth Avengers film in 2026. Marvel is truly fucked with the whole Kang angle, says one top dealmaker who has been who has seen the final Loki episode. And when they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until recently because of the WGA strike. But I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. So let's just pause again for a moment. For those who do not know kind of the current structure at Marvel Studios, I learned it recently, again, from Joanna Robinson talking about this on a podcast. Essentially, how Marvel Studios works is rewrites are built into the creative identity of this movie. You write the script, it's a little fast and loose. You film the movie, what doesn't work, you can it. You do the rewrites, you do the reshoots, and you kind of get the movie and you kind of build it from the ground up. Typically, a movie, how it works is you have a script, finite definition, all goes. You film the movie, maybe do a little bit of reshoots. Marvel very much bakes in the idea of like, no, we're doing massive amounts of rewrites and reworks because we kind of need to see works. Typically, in the past 3 phases, they've been quite good at that, and that's led to great success. With multiversal storytelling, apologies, with multiversal storytelling, that becomes a little bit more difficult. And you have a few reasons for that. There's some of the complexities of COVID scheduling that happen, where WandaVision is supposed to release, I believe it's post Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where Spider-Man No Way Home is supposed to come out before, or actually, sorry, after Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. There's all these scheduling things where they kind of just have all these ideas and they just kind of get put in a certain section of the universe where they're like, okay, we need to push out content. But that also makes a story very hard to follow when it's like, okay, Spider-Man No Way Home was supposed to set up something, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to set up Spider-Man No Way Home. This all gets really confusing, but Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which released May of 2022, was supposed to come out first. Spider-Man No Way Home ended up coming out December of 2021 because they wanted to rush out a Spider-Man movie. That's where it's just like some of the rewrites and reworks don't really work well when you have a schedule, you're having all the films go out, and it's just like, okay, that allows it to work because it's a formula, it's a factory. The exact second there was an issue with the factory, it all just kind of goes to shit. And that's kind of what happened with Marvel Studios these past few years, where it changed. And one of the big things that people are talking about is the introduction of TV shows, in the sense that now everyone is spread thin and everyone's working, but not all the hands are talking to each other. But let's go back to this article. Beyond the bad press from Majors, the brain trust of Marvel is also grappling with the November release of The Marvels. I haven't heard great things about that at this moment, which is funny because I actually think the trailer is quite good. A sequel to 2019's blockbuster Captain Marvel that has been plagued with lengthy reshoots and now appears likely to underperform at the box office. Last I had heard about tracking for this movie is it was looking at about $54 million. Quite a big number, not when your budget's probably somewhere around $200 million. The budgets are out of control. And that's a big issue when a film can make $54 million domestically opening weekend and be considered underperforming at the box office. This is all unprecedented turns of fortune for a company that has enjoyed a nearly uninterrupted strings of hits ever since it started independently producing its movies with 2008's Iron Man. That widely profitable run accumulated to a $2.8 billion success of 2019's Avengers Endgame, a high water mark for the studios that has earned nearly $30 billion over 32 films. Replicating that kind of phenomenon is never easy. However, the source of Marvel's current troubles can be traced back to 2020. That's when the COVID pandemic ushered in a mandate to help both Disney's stock price with an endless torrent of interconnected Marvel content for the studio's fledgling streaming platform Disney Plus. Real pause on this article. Read all about it. It's quite clear the streaming model does not make sense in its current iteration. I cannot just believe a new ad popped up on my screen and I saw that. Back to my point, streaming does not work in the current context. Only Netflix has been proving to be profitable. And even then, making a film for $200 billion that no one sees in theaters doesn't make sense. These Marvel shows are kind of wild. Disney Plus is just basically the idea of let's make so much content, hope it hits, and we just have to kind of keep spending, and our platform will grow. Well, people are watching a lot of these Marvel shows. It's not bringing in a ton of new subscribers. It's not constantly growing the channel. And when streaming doesn't have growth, it's kind of just wasted money. You're bearing money. And before you were getting these theatrical releases, and then you could put out to streaming and have a new life on streaming. There's movies that were kind of underperformed in theaters and then brought a completely new audience once it arrived on a streaming service. That's not the case. Now these movies just kind of come out on Netflix or come out on Disney Plus or come out on Paramount Plus, and they just kind of die there and no one really knows that they're there. That's a big issue, and that's one of the big things that I think that this article is really alluding to. Let's see. COVID pandemic. Oh my gosh, why is this doing? Ushered in a mandate to help boost Disney's stock price. Where is that? According to the plan, there would never be a lapse in superhero fare with either a film in theaters or a new television series streaming at any given moment. But the insurance tsunami of spandex this is where I have trouble reading, guys. Sorry. But the ensuring tsunami of spandex proved to be too much of a good thing. And the demands of churning so much programming taxed the Marvel apparatus. Moreover, the need to tease out an interwoven storyline over so many desperate shows, movies, and platforms created a muddled narrative that baffled viewers. So I'm a big superhero guy. I really enjoy these movies. I really enjoy these TV shows. I will completely admit I have not watched Miss Marvel, even though I liked the first episode. Just kind of forgot about it. Took me forever to actually start She-Hulk. Forgot Secret Invasion came out. Did just start watching Loki season 2. Like the first episode, haven't gone back into it. It is a little bit too much. Have not touched Hawkeye. So that's kind of where I am. So it is this case where, movie every 3 or 4 months, easy enough for me to do. 2 hours of my day, I was already planning on seeing it. I'm a big movie guy, more than I am TV. Easy enough for me to plan out 2 days. Much harder for me to plan out 10 hours. The Marvel's machine was pumping out a lot of content. Did it get to the point where there was too much and that they were burning people out on superheroes? It's possible, says Wall Street analyst Eric Handler, who covers Disney. The more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. They tried experimenting with breaking in some new characters like Shang-Chi and Eternals with mixed result, but with budgets as big as these, you need home runs. Now, I do want to defend real quick. Shang-Chi, I think, was a good financial success for Disney that just came out in a weird time because it came out during COVID. I think had this film come out 2019, 2020 before the COVID pandemic, I think you would have seen a lot more success in it. With that also said, it's weird to introduce Shang-Chi, and now it's like, there was always these post-credit scenes or things teasing the return of these characters. That's kind of what made the first 3 phases of Marvel unique. Shang-Chi, the movie, came out, and you haven't thought about him since this moment. I don't think there's been a single reference to Shang-Chi that I can recall. That is a big issue. The Marvels, which opens in theaters on November 10th, will struggle to get the ball past the infield, at least by Marvel's outsized standards. The movie, which cost $250 million and sees Brie Larson reprising her role as Captain Marvel, is tracking to open to $75 to $80 million, far below the $185 million Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness took domestically in its debut weekend last week. Also, just as a side note, Brie Larson is done with this character. it's quite clear from all insiders at recovering Hollywood, she's burned out. And I don't blame her. She's having to deal with so much trolling since 2019, where she was an Academy Award winning actress before. She got to do exciting parts. And now she's in this role and she's probably just bored out of her mind doing it and just hates the fanfare around it. I'm sure she wants nothing more than just to go back to her old career and make the movies that she wants to make and not have to deal with the internet as much as it is. I can't imagine being in the role of being a woman on the internet in a movie that people dislike for legitimate criticism reasons, and then also just because the internet is mean to women. The Marvels, which opens, oh, I already read that. Directed by Nia DeCosta, The Marvels unites Larson's heroine with true superpowered allies. Tiona Paris's Monica Rambeau, introduced in the 2021 Disney series WandaVision, and Imran Vellani's Kamala Khan, first seen in the 2022 series Miss Marvel. I think Vellani is so talented in Miss Marvel. From what I've seen of her, I just think she captures the essence of that character so well. Going to be quite fascinating to see a movie released where two of the three stars of the movie, you have to watch TV shows to actually understand who they are and where they come from. So we'll see how that goes. But instead of seamlessly building on the success of Captain Marvel, the movie resulted in 4 weeks of reshoots to bring coherence to a tangled storyline. Then eyebrows were raised again when DaCosta began working on another film while The Marvels was still in post-production. The filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for her Tessa Thompson's drama Hedda. A representative for DaCosta declined to comment. I don't know exactly what to make of this DaCosta story. I will say that, again, and I don't remember which news source provided this information, or actually I think it was DaCosta. She gave an interview basically explaining what it's like to work in the Marvel Studio systems and basically being like how Kevin Feige kind of has a full control of this, and you're there to enact a vision and style, but it doesn't really give it the possession and, spirit of your own. You're there to kind of work under somebody. And some people saw that as criticism. I thought it was a pretty honest look into it. So let's see. If you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of a weird for the director to leave with a few months to go, says a source familiar with the productions. The Marvel has seen its release date move back twice. Once to swap places with Quantumania, which was deemed further along, and again when its debut shifted from July to November to give the filmmakers more time to tinker. But the extra time didn't necessarily help. In June, Marvel, which traditionally only solicits feedback from Disney employees and their friends and family, took the uncharacteristic step of holding a public test screening in Texas. The audience gave the film middling reviews. Really curious where it released in Texas. That's not necessarily a state that I would be like, oh, let's see how the Marvels does in Texas. Certain parts of Texas might have done much better. Other parts of Texas, I'm like, really? You're going to release the Marvels there when there's probably a lot of audiences who are probably a little skeptical of these types of movies. So the interesting choice there. I'd be really curious to know more about that. But Marvel has never been in the business of being average. Kevin's real superpower, his genius, has always been in the post-production and getting his hands on movies and making sure they're finished strongly, the source adds. These days, he's spread thin. Feige declined to comment for this story. Feige isn't the only person showing signs of strain. Marvel's entire VFX battalion, including staffers and vendors, are struggling to keep pace with a never-ending stream of productions. So let's, again, just for context, let's think about this. 2019 has a few movies come out. First, it's Captain Marvel in March of 2019. Then it's Avengers Endgame in April of 2019. And then it's Spider-Man Far From Home coming out in, what was that, July of 2019. That's 3 projects. Now, I think the first Captain Marvel was like 2:15. Avengers Endgame was 3 hours. And then Spider-Man Far From Home was probably about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Let's just say generally we're somewhere around 8 hours content. And then, of course, you have Black Widow, which was slated to release in, I believe it was May of 2020. Give that another 2.5 hours. Now take the runtime of that, which is maybe we're somewhere near 10 hours. Each episode of WandaVision was probably somewhere about 40 minutes. 40 minutes, and I believe it was 9 episodes. You can kind of extrapolate from there. Now, don't forget, a few months after WandaVision finished, then you had Loki, 6 episodes, each about 40 minutes. Then you had Hawkeye, which those episodes were actually, some of them were even closer to an hour. That was another six episodes. You can again extrapolate. All of a sudden, instead of going from 10 hours where you have to oversee and do special effects work, you're now probably doing somewhere closer to triple that work, probably somewhere closer to 30, 40 hours of all this. And let's not forget, they're doing reshoots. So you're doing double the amount of work because they just keep reshooting the movie. So going back into this article, this past February, when the credits rolled at the world premiere of Quantumania, shocks rippled through the Regency Village Theater in Westworld over some shoddy CGI. There was at least 10 scenes where the visual effects had been added to the last minute and were out of focus, says one veteran power broker who was there. It was insane. I'd never seen anything like that in my entire career. Everyone was talking about it. Even the kids of executives were talking about it. Let's keep going with this article. The schedule swap with the Marvels had left the Ant-Man sequel in a squeeze, pushing up the post-production schedule by 4.5 months. So again, kind of remember this context. It's not that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was ready. It was just a little bit more ready than the Marvels was. But that's crazy because it doesn't actually mean ready. It just means it's slightly better. Maybe we're, instead of being 52% of the way there, maybe we're 55% of the way there. That's still a lot of process to go. And clearly this film had a lot to go. Marvel's films are known for coming down to the wire, given Feige's ability to foam the runway and land a plane that way, says one executive familiar with how the company operates. But this level of unfinished was unprecedented. It would be noted in the scathing reviews when the tentpole with the $200 million budget opened 11 days after the premiere. I think 200 million is a low estimate. I think that budget was probably closer to 250. Critics weren't the ones dismayed. Critics weren't the only ones dismayed, I should say. Fed up with the 14-hour days and no overtime. Oh my God, 14-hour days with no overtime? Marvel VFX workers voted unanimously to unionize in September, sparkling an industry-wide trend. Good for them. They deserve it. This year, 2023, was the last straw that broke the camel's back, says former Marvel Studios VFX assistant coordinator Anna George, who appeared before the Congressional Labor Caucus on October 19 to testify about the studio's untenable deadlines and working conditions. The pay and long hours of Marvel were the reasons we had start out the unionizing process there. The conditions were completely unsustainable. And this is where we're going to get into the Bob Iger piece of this all. Disney's top brass, including newly returned CEO Bob Iger, was said to be apoplectic about I don't know how to pronounce that word. Sorry about that. About Marvel's VFX troubles. 1 month after the Quantumania premiere debacle, the guillotine fell on Victoria Alonso, who oversaw the studio's physical production, post-production, VFX, and animation. While the reason cited for abrupt firing was her unauthorized role of an executive producer on the Oscar-nominated Argentina in 1985, which I always thought was crazy. You're going to fire someone for getting more press by being in Argentina in 1985 and being nominated for an Academy Award. I think you want more kind of talent behind there. So the idea that you could get in trouble for that always seemed a little fishy. Insiders say Disney was incensed that quality control on the Marvel production was plummeting, especially on the ever-expanding TV front. The VFX logjam had been evident for some time, with some final effects for such Disney Plus series as WandaVision and She-Hulk Attorney at Law inserted after their streaming debuts. So again, for content, and some of you may remember this, these shows would come out week to week, and then a few weeks later, they'd add kind of updated VFX effects. Not that they were new shots. It was just the same things you saw in the movie, just slightly tweaked to be better. This is the scenario of, imagine if the film Sonic the Hedgehog that had all that terrible CGI when the first trailer came out. It came out and it wasn't fully finished. And then like 3 weeks in, you went to the movie to see it again the second time. And you're like, oh, Sonic looks slightly different. It looks a little bit better than I saw 3 weeks ago when the movie premiered. That's what Marvel Studios was doing. that Alonso was busy promoting her art house project while Rome Byrne certainly didn't sit well with Disney's leadership. Alonso's attorney says her client is unable to comment. My guess is that's because she's in the middle of a lawsuit. But some internal sources suggest Alonso was a scapegoat and point to the She-Hulk VFX issues as a symptom of a deeper rot, mainly a lack of oversight on a script development. In the original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Maslany's transformation into her Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the penultimate episode. But after Marvel's brain trust watched footage, they realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot because the audiences could see more of the character's backstory early. That meant the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. That so-called bad VFX we see was because of the half-baked script, says one person involved with She-Hulk. This is not Victoria, that is Kevin. And even above Kevin, those issues need to be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing the Marvel executives to sit with the material, which again, let's go back for a second and think about this. What typically used to happen, pre-production, shoot, see the product, rewrite, rework, reshoot, film comes out, a little bit more seamless. What's now happening is pre-production, shoot, realizes the script is a complete mess, restructure, rewrite the entire show, use pieces from the old ones, put it in episode 1 despite it being in episode 8, kind of changing the entire structure of the episode, but you're still keeping the same release date. That is the key to understanding this all. You can do that process that I just mentioned right there, but you have to give yourself more time. There is no time. It is of the essence of Marvel was they had months to spare. And while they were obviously clearly overworked from the beginning, this is, imagine you being at work for just 1 second, because I experience this quite frequently at my job. You're at work, you're doing something, and you get a new task at your work. And then they're like, okay, here's what we're going to have you do today. You have this one task in front of you. It is due today by 4 p.m. And you're like, okay, I'm working. I'm going to get this task done by 4 p.m. And then your other boss comes in and they're like, hey, we have this other task for you. It's going to also be due at 4 p.m. Okay, well, now I have to do the other task that I was doing. I now have to kind of split my time, but maybe I'll still be able to make it work. Maybe I want to do more proofreading, but it's going to be fine. I still allotted myself enough time to get this done by the end of the day. Someone else then comes back and they're like, hey, I also need you to do this assignment. And that first assignment that you were working on, completely erase that, burn it down. We're restarting the process, but you still have that deadline of 4 p.m. That's what it was like working at Marvel. A crazy analogy, but that's what was going on. All the while, Marvel was bleeding money with a single episode of She-Hulk costing some $25 million, dwarfing the budget of final season episode of HBO's Game of Thrones, but without a similar zeitgeist bang. The August 22 series premiered at the El Capitan Theater foreshadowed what was to come 6 months later at the Quantumania Bow. The She-Hulk special effects were out of focus in multiple scenes. There are signs that the flood of products is leading people to tune out. I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall, but based on the numerous numbers that go with Marvel podcasts, Marvel-based Artifact, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, all the numbers are significantly down. Joanna Robinson, co-author of New York Times bestseller MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, who is a writer and podcaster at The Ringer. The quality is suffering. In 2019, at the peak, if you put Marvel Studios in front of something, people were like, oh, the brand means quality. That association is no longer in the case because there's been so many projects that felt half-baked and undercooked. They've lost their trust in the audience. As public criticism mounts, Feige is pulling the plug on series and projects that aren't working. Case in point, the Blade reboot, with Mahershala Ali signed off for the eponymous role of a vampire. Things looked promising for a 2023 release date, but the project had gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script, Permutation, says the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, a bizarre idea considering that the studio had 2-time Oscar winner Ali on board. Amid reports that Ali was ready to exit over script issues, Feige went back to the drawing board and hired Michael Green, the Oscar winner nominated for his film Logan, to start anew. Speculation around town is the studio's looking to make a film, now slated for 2025 on a budget of less than $100 million, a deviation from Marvel's big spending strategy. Again, here's my speculation. This film is probably, Mahershala Ali's probably pushing this film to be R, make a cool vampire killing movie. And they're like, okay, well, we can't succeed with a $250 million budget. And Mahershala Ali's like, yeah, let's make this film for 60. Let's make it a little bit lower budget wise. And let's just kind of do our own thing and just kind of trust us in the process and we'll deliver. With Iger publicly acknowledging the downside of a Marvel TV glut that diluted focus and attention, the keepers of the comic books empires are considering some dramatic moves. Sources say there's been talks to bring back the original gang for an Avengers movie. This would include reviving Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. Both of them were killed off in Endgame. That shouldn't be a stumbling block. In comic books, beloved characters are often killed off only to be resurrected thanks to the power of things like the multiverse. But the studio hasn't yet committed to the idea if we were able to bring back these actors back. It wouldn't come cheap. Sources say Downey Jr.'s upfront salary for Iron Man 3 was around $25 million. He'd be getting paid way more to come back to the Avengers / MCU. Also because he might have an Oscar by the time this all happens, which will mean he'll be able to raise his quota even more. Will that solve Marvel's Majors problems? When the Quantumania actor was arrested in March, Disney's executives insisted that he could afford to play a waiting game, see game, given that the Avengers Kang Dynasty wasn't expected to begin shooting until early 2024. But then Majors was dropped in a quick succession by his publicists and managers. Didn't hear about this. He remains a client at WME, the agency where he landed after CAA parted ways with him pre-arrest for his brutal conduct towards staff, says one source. CAA declined to comment. In April, other alleged domestic violence victims and Majors began cooperating with the Manhattan District Attorney Office. Then, ahead of a key hearing in October, media outlets, including Variety, obtained a court filing that referenced a police incident in London involving Majors that led his ex-girlfriend to seek medical attention. Making matters even stickier, the ex-girlfriend also worked on Quantumania as a movement coach, and the London incident took place while, oh my God. And the London incident took place while Majors was shooting season 2 of Loki. On October 25th, a New York judge denied the Majors' motion to dismiss the case, which ensures that the actor will stand trial in late November. His legal team is attempting to keep some material in the case sealed. They definitely don't want some stuff coming out based on everything that is going on with him. A studio source notes that regardless of the actor's legal issues, Marvel already had considered moving away from a Majors-led phase because of the box office performance of Quantumania, which will struggle to make a profit. It gives people pause given that Quantumania didn't exactly land, the sources say. On October 27th, Disney removed another Majors film, Searchlight's Magazine Dreams, from the release calendar. Quick aside, I actually saw Magazine Dreams. I was able to see it at Sundance. The movie is flawed. Major gives a very good performance. It's extremely disturbing now, given that the allegations and arrests that have been made on Majors since the release of it. Back in January, I thought it was the sign of just incredible new talent emerging in Hollywood. Now I'm actually wondering if it was more of him just kind of revealing more of who he was to the public, and that's why that role came so easy for him. Recasting Majors is an option. I've always just said, just pay Denzel Washington as much money as you want and have him be an older version of that character, Kang the Conqueror. Everyone would love it, and Denzel would do the role much better. I think he'd be able to chew the scenery in a really fun way, where Majors is very stern with the role. Just imagine Denzel Washington playing 1,000 roles. Dumped a ton of money on him. Feige did when he replaced Terrence Howard in Iron Man 2 with Don Cheadle. In fact, Marvel isn't afraid to change direction even after making splashy announcements. One real quick before we read this is that's an unfair comparison because Don Cheadle, Terrence Howard, that's such a lower character and it's not the basis of your next few phases, where Kang the Conqueror was very clearly. So it is slightly different situation. Armor Wars was the first unveiled as a series and is now being developed as a feature, while the studio's push to adapt the comic book Inhumans into a feature film generated headline that is now dormant. The now defunct Marvel Television mounted an Inhumans TV series in 2017 that ran for one season on ABC. That's why Black Bolt was in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I was curious if they were ever going to do more with that. Still, there was one bright spot in 2023. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which became Marvel's biggest draw of the year with $845 million worldwide. The fact that it was directed by James Gunn, the guy now running rival DC Studios, was lost on no one. With Marvel, it used to be as close as a guarantee as you could get, says Paul. Uh, sorry, I cannot pronounce Paul's last name. A box office analysis at Comscore. So going all in on the budgets makes sense. Guardians 3 was a bit overlooked in how successful it was, but it had James Gunn and Chris Pratt, and I think star power is becoming more important. Then there was Quantumania with $476 million. Anything under $500 is viewed as a disappointment, and their overreaching expectations are a result of so much success over the years. That's the exact issue. I think it's the big complex issue, the ego of this all. Marvel spends however much money thinking they're going to get that amount of money back. Where it's like, okay, we're guaranteed to make $1 billion. So who cares if the film's $250 million more? You have to double that. Maybe it's about 500 million post marketing the film. That still leaves a lot of range for profit. The issue is that's not true when the films are not making close to $1 billion and are making close to $500 million, which means after your $250 million budget with another $250 million for promotions, you're at $500 million. If the film only grosses $500 million, it either flopped or did not make enough money back to justify its existence. It's just math in Hollywood. That's key. When you have to consider promotion cost in these movies. And often how box office analysis do it is they just double the budget. So if a movie costs $200 million, $400 million is the line. If it costs $100 million, you have to make $200 million. That's not a clear-cut rule. It's just kind of a good rule to use, generally speaking. The key to reinvigorating Marvel may lie with the superhero arsenal that Disney acquired during its 2019 purchase of 21st Century Fox. The deal that brought several blue-chip heroes, such as the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, back under the studio's control. Already, fans are geeking out about the next year's Deadpool 3, which reunites Ryan Reynolds' Merc of the Mouth with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and a reboot of Fantastic Four slated for 2025. As a bonus, the Fox editions give Feige an opportunity to reimagine the X-Men franchise, the very property he cut his teeth on as a young executive on Lauren Schulder's Donner's production company. Now that the WGA strike is in the rearview window, Marvel has started talking to writers about bringing the X-Men into the MCU fold. With Feige calibrates, the rest of the industry is anxious, hoping that Marvel's best days are not behind. Writing the Marvel obituary would be ill-advised, says Jason Squire, professionals emeritus at USC School of Cinematic Arts and host of the Movie Business podcast. Kevin Feige is the Babe Ruth of Marvel executives, and Marvel has the profitable track record in movie history, no question. End of the article. One last point before I kind of leave, because there's a lot in that thing. I'm still in shock that Fox hasn't really been used by Disney yet in terms of Marvel. The only real glimpse that we've had of the 21st century characters being brought in was that Reed Richards cameo in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And by all accounts, that was truly a cameo that will not lead to anything, because John Krasinski does not seem to be Mr. Fantastic in the upcoming universe. So they got this in 2019. It's about to be 2024 in a few months. That's close to, what is that, 3 or 4 years of it being dormant. Deadpool 3 is supposed to come out in May 2024, which was supposed to be kind of the return of the mutants in the MCU, truly the return of some of those iconic characters with Wolverine, etc. I should just mention, because I forgot, Professor X is in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, played by Patrick Stewart. So they had 2 iterations of that in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and not really anything else. Deadpool 3, and this is kind of the last point that I'm going to make. The SAG strikes are still going on. The Screen Actors Guild strikes are still going on. Now, there are rumors that this strike may be well over by the next week or so. Again, I'm recording November 1st. That doesn't mean it's for sure over. And even if it's over, you got to get the actors back. You got to get it all mounted up. You got to do it all. And Deadpool 3 wasn't done filming. Deadpool 3, and this isn't me having any inside knowledge, it's just pure obviousness. Deadpool 3 will not make its release date. It was supposed to come out in May 2023, and it stopped production in July. August, September, October, beginning of November. That's about 4 to 5 months of no production that has happened on it. Maybe you could do some of the VFX arts on it. You could not shoot the film because the actors were on strikes, and you couldn't rewrite the film because the writers were on strikes. That is going to delay the movie. It is not coming out May 2024. You can bet on this. This article gives a lot. It's extremely well written, and it's signs of danger to come. And while I do agree with this last thought made by Jason Squire that you can't write its obituary, you definitely can be concerned and being like, this is looking pretty sick. And I don't know if it's going to have a comeback. I don't know if a comeback's in the pictures from Marvel Studios. Anyway, thank you all for listening to this video and watching. If you like my analysis, if you like this form of me communicating, I've never done really just me reading an article and giving my analysis on it, let me know. And maybe I'll do more of these in the video. I just thought it was a big article. So thank you all so much for watching. Take care. My name is Ben Friedman. If you like this channel, like and subscribe, helps me out. Really appreciate it all. Take care. Bye-bye.